Alright, everybody, welcome to the first episode of the new podcast, God, Family, and Trapping. I'm your host, Jamie Blakely. I just kind of wanted to start a podcast. I felt like God had been calling me for a while to start doing a podcast, and I've kind of been pushing it off for about a year, but I decided now is the right time to do it. So, like I said, this is the first episode, so there's going to be a lot for me to learn and, different kinds of equipment and stuff like that to get. But I just kind of wanted to let you guys know what you can expect with this podcast. As you can tell, the name is God, Family, and Trapping. And, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian my whole life. I've grown a lot closer with Jesus and everything in the last 2 years, a lot more than I had my whole life. And, I have a family. I have a wife that I've been married to for a little over 9 years now. We have 2 kids, a 4-year-old daughter and another daughter that just turned 1. And one of my favorite hobbies and things to do is trapping. I mean, I've built my life around it now. That's where I earn my income. And I love everything about trapping. And I just want everybody to know the way I have this podcast named is how I put my priorities in my life. God's first, family second, and then trapping is my third. Because that's what I like to do. That's my job. That's everything. And this podcast is going to be something that I'm going to build off of that. And I just kind of want to do a podcast a little different than a lot of the ones I've seen. A lot of the podcasts, every episode, they're answering questions that people send in, or they have guests every episode, or maybe it's just the host that's talking about different things that come up in the world and stuff like that. I kind of want this to be a mix of everything. So, some weeks we might have guests, some weeks it might just be me, and some weeks maybe I got a lot of questions on social media or something that I want to answer. So, it's going to kind of just be a little bit of everything, is what you guys can expect. And for the people that have not met me or don't know me that well or haven't followed me, I just kind of want to introduce myself. Like I said, my name's Jamie Blakely. I'm 30 years old. I live in Jane, Missouri, which is the southwest corner of Missouri. I grew up here, lived here my whole life. We lived in Arkansas for 2 years. Was not a big fan of that. Was very glad to be able to move back. But that was for a job. And when I moved back, we had bought a little A-frame house that was about, 150 yards from my parents, where they lived. And that's where I grew up. Well, after living here for would have been 3 years, I decided to open up a outdoor store. I had built a hunting team, which used to be called Ozark Trophy Hunters. There was 5 or 6 of us. We did different videos and stuff like that. I had gone to different hunting conventions and all kinds of stuff that I had gotten involved into. I was pro staff for a couple businesses, and that kind of turned into me opening an outdoor store, something that I'd kind of always wanted to do. So I did that in 2018. We opened August 18th of 2018. And that fall, I had some people that were friends of mine that became customers through my store, was talking about trapping and, carrying trapping supplies. There was nowhere around our area to get that. So I had done research. In the meantime, I have never trapped. I knew about trapping, but I didn't really know anything about it. I've never done it or anything like that. So I did some research. I found a bunch of Facebook groups and was reading a lot. Got in touch with a business called Trap Shack. I believe they were in Wisconsin, if I remember right. And I sent them an email about me opening up a outdoor store, and I was wanting to start carrying some trapping supplies that I wouldn't be carrying a whole lot because I was a brand new store. stuff like that. Maybe a dozen of 5 different traps, 3 or 4 baits and some lures, a couple supplies, stuff like that. So they agreed to do that, and that's how I got started in it. I was actually selling trapping supplies before I actually had my own experience with trapping. That year, so it had been 2018, my brother had trapped about a couple years before that. One of our friends had showed him how to trap. So I decided me and him was going to go trapping and see how well we could do. So this was my first year trapping. We didn't really keep numbers. I'm sure we kept, what our catch ratio was in our heads, but it's not something we wrote down and kept track of. But I know we caught at least, 12 to 14 coyotes. I know we caught at least 2 gray fox because I remember both those catches. I remember we caught 2 bobcats in the same trap. Lots of raccoons and possums, stuff like that. So we had a very, very successful season, especially for it being my first season, which I thought was pretty cool. And so, like I said, I went from selling traps at my outdoor store to my first year actually trapping was 2018. Well, in 2019, now that I'd had experience with trapping, I'd had 6, 7, 8 months to do research and get into conversation with some people. I started bringing in more trapping supplies. Well, as I did that, I started selling a lot more trapping supplies. And it got to where at least 80% of what I sold in my store was trapping supplies. And out of the 80% I sold, 90% of that was online. I had a lot of like chicken farmers and stuff like that from Arkansas, because we're only about 3 or 4 miles from Arkansas. Had a lot of chicken farmers come and want to buy a lot of supplies from me. So I was selling a lot of supplies that way, but most of what I sold was online. So it would have been the beginning of July in 2019, I had decided to close my store because it got to where, like I said, 85 to 90% of everything I sold was online. And I was like, well, I can do this at my own house and not have the overhead of having this building and this business. So that's what I did. I transitioned into doing it at my home, and all I carried from that point was trapping supplies. I didn't carry the fishing supplies no more, the hunting supplies, none of that stuff. So in that would have been 2019. So I transitioned into doing that. I did a little, I'll say like piddly trapping in 2019 because I was so busy with doing that. And I really built the business up like really bigger than I had expected it to be. And this lasted until March or April, I think, of 2020. And right about, if I remember right about then is when COVID was starting. It was about March and April of 2020. That's when COVID had kind of started, and a lot of my customers, everybody was having a hard time. People were getting laid off. They didn't have money to fund their hobbies or anything like that. So business started dying off very, very quickly. Well, then in June 2020, we had our first daughter. Well, at this point, I'm still trying to run the trapping business, as it's going downhill very, very hard. Well, then come the end of 2020, it got to where I didn't have a whole lot of, my wife, she had moved into a stay-at-home mom because she just had our daughter. And, well, actually, I think it was the beginning of 21 that she did that. And where was I at? I forgot where I was at. So she started being a stay-at-home mom at the beginning of 2021. And I was still doing the trapping business, and it was still doing well. But then in 2021 is when, it was like the trapping just completely died almost. And then at the end of 21 is when I had my biggest season of trapping. That's when I started my YouTube channel. And you guys can go back on Blakely's Trapping on YouTube. You can see that season that I had. I did really well. I think I remember I caught like 17 coyotes and 2 fox. And I just had a pretty decent season. You know, as you can tell, this was my first big season trapping by myself. I wasn't trapping with my brother or nothing. This was just all by myself. So there was a whole another learning experience there. And the business part kind of picked up, you know, towards the end of 21 through trapping season. And then in 22, after trapping season, it completely came to a halt again, to where I wasn't really doing very well in my business and stuff like that. And that's when I kind of had to talk with my wife that I needed to probably find a job. I had recently joined the fire department that we have here locally, and the assistant chief owned a donut shop, and it was working nights. And I asked him, hey, you know, do you have any extra hours that I could pick up here and there? And he said, sure. Well, it wasn't very long, and I started working 7 nights a week at the donut shop. And I did that for almost a year. Well, when I quit there, I got a job working at a restaurant. Well, during that year, which would have been the end of 22 and 23, I wasn't able to trap. Well, I guess I need to go back to 2021. In June of 2021, I also had, it was not quite a heart attack, but I had a heart rate of 270 and ended up being in the hospital for most of a week and ended up getting a defibrillator. So I wasn't able to work through that time. The business, you know, was doing all right, wasn't doing great, and then it really died off because COVID happened again. Like, it was the second wave, I think they called it, of COVID, and it just got really bad. So in 22, that's when I started working at the donut shop. Well, I worked through the winter and everything. I didn't get to trap at all because, like I said, I was working 7 nights a week. In 2023, I picked up another job working at a restaurant. And I want to say this was probably around April of 23. And I worked there for about 4 months before I quit. And that's when I decided I wanted to get back into doing trapping. And then I quit, and then I decided to open a mechanic shop in 2023, last year, with my brother. And it is now, today, it has been open for a little over a year. But back in July, I decided that I was going to focus back into trapping. And I told my brother to just take over the shop, that I want to get back into trapping. And this was 2 weeks before the NTA in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So we ended up going to Sioux Falls, South Dakota at the end of July. And I had a blast. And that's when I decided that, you know, I'm just 100% going to throw everything that I have back into trapping. This is what I want to do. And this is where I'm at now. You know, in January of 24, I bought a business, the Trapper's Pole. And I have worked all year and all summer at building this product, this business up, getting it out, advertising it like crazy. And that's kind of where I'm at right now today. I'm working on the trapping stuff again. I'm going to trap hard this year. I'm going to work hard on my bait and lure business, the Trapper's Pole business. Now I'm starting this podcast, and I'm doing all this. So, like I said, this is the first episode. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me at blakelystrapping@gmail.com. Any questions you have, I'll try to answer them in another episode. I still am not sure how often I'm going to have episodes. They're probably going to be pretty short episodes until I get the funds to buy the right equipment and the right software and stuff like that. So, anyways, I appreciate you guys listening. And if you have any questions, like I said, reach out to me. And I hope to see you guys next time on God, Family, and Trapping. Thank you.